Hello, welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB film podcast. Today's guest is somebody unafraid to speak truth to power, a midwife whistleblower and unapologetic freethinker. From challenging systemic issues in the healthcare system to taking a stand by withholding her council tax, Victoria brings a fearless voice to the front lines of personal and political resistance. Get ready for a raw, eye-watering conversation about integrity, courage, and questioning the status quo. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Victoria Rixon.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
So welcome to the show, Victoria. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm honoured to be here.
We're honoured to have you here. So can I ask you then, what made you started as a midwife? When did you realise that something's not right with this system that we're in? What made you go out there and tell the world what is really going on?
I wouldn't say I knew it at the time. It's been reflection.
Okay.
And looking back. But obviously for 16, 17 years, I'd been in normal employment. So out in the normal world, well, you say normal, what's normal? But out in the world of employment, I wasn't in an institution. I was always in private corporations, little businesses or whatever. So to go from that and be nurtured and then leave my jobs and have really, like, I keep in touch with people that I used to work with, and they stayed on my Facebook all these years. Some of them when I was 18 years old. I found it astonishing that as I aged and built this beautiful understanding of being a mother and a woman and all of my failings, the career that I chose for me in midwifery was to nurture me and make me a better person, really. Because I was quite hot-headed. I didn't know how to channel myself properly. I've always been very good at learning, like a sponge. So it goes in, you show me once, I'll repeat it. So I'm quite easy to manipulate in that way. If you want to teach me to do something well, you teach me, because I would just go and then do it. But I think when I went to uni, and I couldn't believe it was so regimented. You couldn't have a university hoodie with midwifery on it. We were the only ones that seemed to be exempt. The lecturers were so uptight. They had a pole up their backside. Never really on your level. A bit like politicians with the young kids these days. They're never going to even engage with that because they're so out of touch. And I would say midwifery lecturing and midwifery training is actually completely out of touch of women. And it started there, really, Chris, to be honest. And it just never felt, because I was going through a divorce, it felt like it was the divorce. I thought, oh, well, it must be this. But actually the system, like venom, got inside my veins and inside of me. And I lost so much confidence and belief in myself. I was unrecognizable at times.
Such a horrible experience to go through, especially when people go into those kind of vocations with the purest of intent, and to have to suffer a life where you're degraded to the point where you just want to give it all up. I think that's horrendous.
Oh, honestly, some of my colleagues, Chris, if I remember, when we qualified, so I think there was 12 of us in our Plymouth cohort. By the time I left, there's only 2 left from the year that I was in, the first year that I was in. So some of the midwives used to come to work and they would be shaking on labour ward. They used to never sleep. It was so distressing to see my colleagues like that. And there was me kind of like, I was gliding through it and I did really well, but my body got hit with diabetes after 4 years in it. So I knew internally I must be resilient enough to not know it's like rippling inside my body. Whereas my colleagues, it was rippling out and they were a wreck. Whereas I was like, oh, what's the problem? It's not that bad. I mean, it isn't great, but so it was only when my body got hit with an illness, I then thought, it's killing me. It's slowly killing me and I don't even realize it.
It's quite a daunting thought.
Yeah.
Isn't it? That Oh dear.
I'm in
So,
healthcare and everybody seems to be unwell. And then if you think I'm working 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. and I never, ever, ever had an hour's break ever in my whole career, you might be able to steal 20 minutes or half an hour or 40 minutes. It was so busy, you would literally be stealing food to eat and biscuits and cups of tea, which they eventually then took away from us. They took tea away from the desk and said you can't drink at the desk anymore.
and that's horrendous. And you obviously had to pay for your parking at the hospital as well. Let's not
Parking,
forget
about I think it
that.
worked out £600 a year. You know, so whenever you got an increment, the parking went up, or
I,
or
I,
would
I just don't understand how they get away with, how they justify it, how they get away with it, because it just makes no sense in a sane world.
I think healthcare practitioners are so, it's very rare to go in and meet a horrible, horrible practitioner. I'm going to be honest. The
Mm.
colleagues that I work with, majority of the time, were great. You know, you might see some rat bags and you're like, you know, you're not very pleasant. But they're not pleasant because they're overworked and burnt out. But at the basis of any human being is love and kindness, especially if you're going into those careers. So
Mm.
I don't believe anybody goes to work to cause harm. What they don't do is they don't take responsibility for any trauma that they've got in their life up until they qualify or they start training, which means you're getting secondary and subsequent trauma on top of trauma. And I think because most nurses and midwives are quite subservient, we go to help. We don't go to gain.
No, that's right.
We but it is quite an ego fix at the same time. And I'm going to be honest and say that other people might not be brave enough to admit that, but it was really like ego for me to. When I think about it now, I could cringe. But oh,
Well,
I'm
like
a
a god
midwife.
complex.
Like I'm a midwife. And now I'm like, oh God, why did I feel that? How could I feel
Well,
like
if it makes you feel any better, when I first become elected as a town councillor, for the first week or month, I maybe walked around the town with my head up high, thinking, "Yeah, yeah, I'm
yeah,
actually an official part of it." That soon wore off, and within a year, I'd resigned because it's just so bloody corrupt. I didn't want any part of it. So, we all make these mistakes. So I wouldn't worry about that. I wouldn't beat yourself up about that one. Not at all.
at least I can reflect and see I was maybe doing that. And it was more so for I could be the first one that graduated in the family. My dad was really proud that he could tell everybody I was a midwife. That's definitely all ego and actually is material because at the end of the day, being a midwife, in my eyes, is holding space for someone to make a choice. I was never
Mm.
a pushy midwife. If someone said they didn't want something, I'm like, that's fine. But then I soon realized you can't say that if it's outside the parameters of the policies. And that never really matched with me because, but then I soon noticed with COVID, women never really pushed outside the policies anymore. They were just agreeing to anything and everything. It was very rare to come across someone that declined something and had like full body autonomy in it. I just think as the years went on, I shrunk. Like metaphorically, I felt I was
Mm.
sinking into my chair at work, and this proud woman and mother who's raised 4 boys and has overcome a marriage breakdown, and my ex-husband's my best friend,
Well,
and now
that's
my
really
husband,
good.
and we've overcome so much. I'm like, so I can't even balance this. How have I got this in my life out here in this real world with all my family and friends, but I can't get that in my job? It was so peculiar.
Yeah. But then I guess from a spiritual point of view, that you needed to have that family in order for you to do what you've done with your career.
Yes.
Because
If I didn't
if
have
you
them,
didn't
I
have that base, then you wouldn't have been able to do what you did.
no, and I wouldn't have been able to walk out.
No.
No, I agree
So
with
there
you.
you go. There's your answer.
We got there, yay.
But in the end, so the system, how has the system responded to your whistleblowing then? Have you faced a huge resistance, or have you had a lot of support, or has it been a fair mix of both?
Publicly, the support has been unbelievable. My ex, I only opened in November and wasn't public on there until at the end of January when I put my name to it. I said to Dr. Cartland, I'm gonna go for it, and he went, do it, churning me up in the back. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. And because the year before had been quite difficult, and then I thought, no, I'm ready now. I've dealt with a lot of pain and suffering in my traumas, and that's everybody else's opinion. I need to move on. And I came back out in January, and since then I'm on 32,000 on X, and I'm on 10,000 on TikTok just from Saturday. It's only had 1,000.
Blimey.
So it's working because I just post content and I'm quite direct. But I sent this email, I got this up to read to you on the 10th of February last year. I wrote to the chief executive. And I don't think many people would have the courage to do that because I look at her like just a normal woman. She's not any higher than me. She might be paid more, but she doesn't have any right
She
not to
still
hear my view.
poos.
She still poos.
She still
She
has to
might pick
wipe
her
her own
nose.
bum. She's not
Yeah,
the queen.
exactly. I wrote in here, Dear Anne, I hope this email finds you well and hope you go on to spend well-earned time resting after years of service. I have reached the end of my road and the end of my employment on the 3rd of April. I've written up my exit interview, which I will share on my departure. I would like to set the tone that what steps I take next are for those left behind and to find a way to support my beloved midwifery from afar. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me a couple of years ago. All the best, Victoria. So I went to her 2 years before, knocked on her door and told her everything that was going on in maternity. So that would have been 2022. And nothing changed in that time. So I felt I could tell her that. And then after that, I got enticed into a meeting with a director who was in the chief exec team. And he basically said that whistleblowers go missing overnight.
Really?
Yeah.
As in,
He looked uncomfortable as he said it. He kind of like went up on his chair. And I got the impression when I look back that whether someone was jabbing him in the side to say it or whether he didn't want to say that. I feel like maybe he was a bit forced, which is why I just continued talking to show him I'm not scared of you. I'm not going to let you jump into my energy. And it is all about learning that, isn't it? So I continued the meeting, and then afterwards I found the message I sent him. Actually, I screenshotted it and I just said, look, I'd like to know the new CEO's email. I'd like to email them everything. And I've emailed them everything and told them about his name, who it was. I've referred him to the governing bodies, all of this. So I've done all the right procedures. Not one person has stepped up and said, actually, that's against the law. The police, nobody. So they're protecting each other. I've realised that now.
oh, it's one big club.
Oh, it's a big
Oh,
club that I'm not in.
Oh, it is. It's a huge big club. I have actually written some questions then because I do try sometimes. In your view, what are the most urgent changes needed to make the NHS maternity care safe and sustainable for both mothers and midwives? And do you honestly ever see that coming to fruition?
So there's no particular importance of order because they're all equally part of how the system runs, because you can't have one without the other. Firstly, pregnancy is not an illness, it's not a medical condition. So I believe midwifery services should never be attached to the hospital. It should be somewhere away from the hospital, away from that mindset of A&E's right there. There's people rushing around. You know, women walk through the main doors in my hospital where I worked, and you could have someone on a stretcher in a coma going for an x-ray, and they're walking through pregnant. Women aren't sick, they're pregnant, and that is a normal physiological part of being a woman and a baby. Yes, women are sick and not well, and that's a different road. But so that's my first point. The second point is, to get anything out there, there has to be an impartial balance of information sharing. And that is that the midwife should be able to whistleblow or speak up to an external company that they choose, that is funded by their employer, for them to do an affidavit, a full witness statement without any repercussions. Because we now know the whistleblowing policy and law doesn't stand up because, as you know, what we've all gone through. So that is so vital. And I say this a lot. There is currently 51% of NHS litigation claims are obstetric. So our maternity.
Okay.
That's a hell of a lot. And it's over £1 billion. So you can't have £1 billion of claims without a single midwife's voice. It doesn't add up. So I've now learned the midwives are probably one of the most gagged professions alongside nursing. and we're under the one governing body. So my other worry is you've only got one place of all the evidence. So you've only got the NHS feeding the evidence. You've only got the Royal College of Midwives feeding the evidence, which feeds into the government, and the Nursing and Midwifery Council, which feeds into all three. There's no impartial way where to go. So we need like a council or something that runs alongside as a buffer to say, if you're not happy over here, you go to this place, and then you make your mind up. So those things I think are the most vital.
Like an ombudsman, but for the NHS.
But not funded. They shouldn't have anything to do with run by the midwives, like run by people.
It's the same with any government thing, though, isn't it? I mean, take the COVID inquiry. It was the government doing their own research.
And the post office.
It's ridiculous.
It was ran in Portland Square in London. You're like, what? It's all along there. They're all in there. What is going on?
I know, yeah. It's certainly an interesting time to be alive. I don't necessarily know whether it's a good time to be alive, but I suppose we all chose to be here at this time for a reason. And I do think, especially since the COVID, and I'm always saying this, it was a perfect time to wake so many people up to what's going on. And that's when I started to get into like the council tax thing as well. And I know that you've got some stories to talk about on that. Would you like to share some information?
Absolutely. So
how did we get to that point first?
I left my job, and then I was applying for universal credits, and obviously then everything changed because I was the main earner. I also lost my car because I had a work car, which came out of my salary sacrifice scheme. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a credit agreement. It was just through my salary sacrifice, and it impacted my pension, my gross pension payments and taxable stuff. It was all that sort of thing. Anyway, so when I left, I wrote to the council to say, look, I'm having to hold back funds to try and save for a car and try and get around. I've got type 1 diabetes, so walking can sometimes be really, really stressful in the heat and all of these things. So I wrote to the council to say, look, I'd really like a break. Can you show me where my money's going? I did a freedom of information. And they kind of came back with, it wasn't anything to do with me being a human being. It was really aggressive, and this is what you're doing, and that's the end of it. And they actually sent me a letter for £61.25 that I'd missed my first payment of council tax. I've got it in my bundle. I then rang up because I went into a bit of fear, I'm not afraid to admit that, and I rang up and made a payment arrangement, and then they slapped 25. So I couldn't afford the £61, and they slapped 25 quid on top, right, of court fees. So then I had a payment arrangement for the end of September. So that was the July. So at the end of September, when I missed the payment on the 23rd of September, they sent me a payment arrangement notice. In the meantime, the original payment of £61.25 went to summons to the court. So I've got two avenues going on. And then I get this letter from the court that actually is, I should have got it out, it's in the bundle. Plymouth District Southwest Magistrate Court summons you to court. Now, as a lay member of the public, that to me doesn't come from the council. That's a letter from the court. So I stayed in that lane, that this is from the court in my eyes. So I'm now thinking, well, as a midwife who might have to do a DBS check, if I'm found guilty, that will go on my DBS record as what they're saying is if I'm found guilty in court, because you have to declare anything you're found guilty of. So it goes ahead. But also at the meantime, I'm getting arrangement notices. So I'm thinking, what is happening here? Because I arranged the payment so that it should never have gone to the summons, to the court. So anyway, in the meantime, a few days later, I get a letter from Jacobs for £601. Now, I then DSAR'd them, DSAR'd the council, DSAR'd the magistrates, and said there's something not right here. And I wasn't very au fait with the whole liability order stuff. I didn't really have an understanding. It's only what I've learned since. Like I say, I'm a quick learner. I learned a lot very quickly. So what I did was I DSAR'd them all and didn't get anything. And what I did get back from the council was a huge box of years of voting stuff and nothing relevant to the courts. So I rang the court to ask if I attend. They said no. So that was really strange. And then I went back to the court to ask for the transcripts. And I also went to the council to ask for their legal bundle. So if you're submitting a claim to any court or you're submitting anything, I know that because I've done in my own employment tribunal, you submit a claim and then a defense comes in and then you have a bundle. Well, they wrote back saying they don't have to have that. So I've got all of that. And I thought, right, okay, this is quite interesting now. There's something amiss here. So what then happened was Jacobs were enforcing £601.25. They slapped their own fee on top of it at 75 quid. And then the council reduced my bill from £600 to £200, which I thought was a bit peculiar because I'd already been in receipt of universal credits for the same amount each month. So it wouldn't reflect the council tax that much because it had already reduced. So I thought, well, how's that happened? So I then wrote to both CEOs, copied them in and said, what's the answer here? Are you enforcing 601? Because the magistrate liability orders for 601.25, you're enforcing that, but now it's 256. So Jacob sent me a change of liability order notice themselves with their name on it with the new amount on. I thought, you can't do that. That's when I started really getting into it. So because they didn't send me the DSAR and they didn't show their authority, I just submitted a claim to the court and thought, well, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I've got nothing to lose. I lost all fear at that point. So on the 2nd of December, I submitted the claim form and I started getting my bundle together. Now, because I'm part of Pete Wilson's group, Check the Matrix, I'm on loads of Facebook groups. I'm just picking up bits of information. I'm like, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to go for it. So in April, so from October, Chris, to the 23rd of April, I was receiving one letter a month from Jacobs, no phone calls, nothing. When I went to the hearing on the 23rd of April, the judge agreed I could go away and give my whole evidence and come back and present it at another strikeout hearing. So she let me tip my hand, really. So I went away, put a bundle together and then sent it. But then I realized it's not strong enough. It's not strong enough. I need to get it even better. So Robin Hood, don't know if you've heard of Blue Ball?
No.
He came to me and said, how big are your balls? And I went, yeah, I'm really masculine. And he said, look, let's take it on. So we sat down for quite some time and put it together. And it ended up being 330 pages in a bundle, which boxed every single law, common law, Black's law, Halsbury law, presumptions of law,
Divine
their
law.
law. I literally, Chris, we boxed the judge in. They had nowhere to go. There was two choices. He either admitted it and that would have folded everything, or he struck it out and made it look fraudulent. That was the two options. So when I got to the day before court, the day after they received the bundle, I got a threat from the solicitor. Really threatening email. You need to take legal advice now. I just kept sending it to the courts. Now, from the 23rd of April to the hearing on the 10th of June, they harassed me every single day. Letter, phone calls, voicemails, text messages.
See, that in itself is illegal, isn't it?
Well, not according to the barrister who says we can communicate with the client between 9 and 5. Oh, he was an obnoxious little git. So I was submitting my bundle, but then every time new evidence came in, I'm having to download it, put it on a USB, update the page numbers. So they sabotaged me having a really strong particulars claim in places, which I went to court and argued. The judge basically lost his absolute shit with me. He was not happy and he went, that's it, I'm striking this out. And he just said, I don't give a toff about you.
What does striking it out mean? Just closing
striking it out. It's a strikeout claim. So he said that it had no prospect of success, but he admitted I was harassed. He admitted it was a lot. So then when I got my paper for the order from him, it actually said that I didn't bring, what was that he said? The claimant failed to bring a claim, but you didn't say that in the courtroom. So what I realized was they were all in bed with each other and the judge was asking the barrister for advice in the courtroom. So Wayne Layton came with me to that. And they weren't interested in anything that I had to say. They struck it out and slapped me with a 4,700 cost order, which I'm never going to pay. I've just done a void order for it. So what I learned was, that's interesting. So I've got a couple of choices. I crumble and I give in, or I sleep on it and I reflect and I find the connection to myself with what to do next. And everything in me said, you push on. So I've just submitted a claim to the Equity Court against Plymouth City Council and Jacobs together with breach of GDPR with no authority, which links harassment into it. I've not claimed harassment, but it links into it. So that's where I'm going with it.
Wow.
Just
I
got to
wish
keep
we had
pushing.
more people like you. Because I admit, if I get a brown letter through the door, I'm like, your heart goes, because you just think the worst, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
And they like most people, like the bailiffs themselves or the TV license, they rely on your fear.
They feed
So
off it.
exactly, but the minute you can break that, I imagine it's so liberating because I haven't really been put in the position where I've had to test it yet. But yeah, it must be so liberating. I admire anyone who can take on the system because they're bloody seasoned professionals.
And I think what they do is they must all meet and work out a strategy to reply to each one, which throws everybody down a different road, which means no one's got one structure. So we all have to attack it a different way. And they might respond at a different stage in letters to other people. But what I've learned is you can tackle them in their jurisdiction along with the jurisdiction you want to be in. That's your choice. So people say stay out the courtroom. Yeah, they're right. I get it now why you wouldn't go into that. It wasn't an unpleasant experience. It was uncomfortable, but I felt really empowered after because what I
It's
learned,
something that you had to go through. You
yes,
had to go through that process.
yes, it's a bit like now I've walked it, I can talk it. Whereas I go on Facebook and a lot of people give you all these judgments, and I'm like, but you've never walked it. You don't know. So I don't think there's anything wrong with tackling their system. I agree with that myself, but not everybody does. So I'm gonna go to that next level, and then keeping it as simple as possible, but using the fact that there is other law that protects me that I want to be under. And I can have my right to bring that into this courtroom. So I think what I learned is they didn't like the fact that my original little bundle that was flaky like this ended up being like this. And it literally boxed them in. And I believe that would have shut down every single council ever enforcing council tax in the whole country. It was that good. It took us 8 solid days at the laptop, day in and day out, 27 sections of evidence, which boxed in GDPR, harassment, uttering, fraud, coercion, harassment. It was all boxed in, and every single page was numbered, evidenced in law. It was absolutely incredible. And I didn't do that.
Can you see a point in time where this whole council tax thing is just going to have to implode? Do you think there'll be a point where there's just too many people who have woken up to the scam?
Yeah, I think non-compliance is the only answer. If everybody is non-compliant, I mean, my dad is a Navy, ex-Navy, submariner, likes to live in the rules, went to see the Queen in her coffin, that sort of thing. He just sent me the other day help. And I said, is everything all right? You're 500 miles away. And he went, I haven't paid my council tax. And I was like, what? What? And he just went, well, I just thought I'd test it. But most people don't want to pay. They just don't want to understand why they don't need to pay. And I think there's 2 different roads there. And the other thing for me is if I'm due to pay, it doesn't bother me. I've not got a money wound. If I'm meant to pay a bill, I'll pay it and pay my way. So if I now can understand that £45 a month is to pay for my bins, I'll pay them directly. My water bill, I'll pay them a small amount because they can't prove to me if it's clean. So I'm now having to distill it. Those sorts of things. I'm in that negotiation now. And I think it's not that I won't stop paying because you do deliver something to my door, which I'm more than respectful on. But it's about negotiating and having a conditional acceptance of what this now looks like. But I think if the councils all fold, my worry is they can't because it would send everybody into absolute hysteria. So everything is going to be like a slide over and we wouldn't know it's ever happened.
Or
Do
do
you know
you
what I
think
mean?
this is what devolution's about? Do you
Yeah,
reckon that's
perhaps. I do think the non-compliance is the way forward because it's such a simple fix.
Mm.
That young lad that does the Great British Strike, can't remember his name with the glasses. What's his name on TikTok? He's great.
Not Montgomery.
Not Montgomery
Mm.
Toms, the guy that said on the 25th of May we would all not pay council tax. It was like the Great British Strike or something. He's got the point of that if we all stop that one day, there's not enough bailiffs, there's not enough courts, there's not enough councils. They would never ever run. Now I appreciate they wouldn't then be able to fund what they're saying as social care, but they would because something would have to come in its place. But what the people need to realize is you don't just give away money. You can't go to work. You have to work a whole month to get paid. You have to give first before they
Mm.
give to you. But in the council, it's all paid up in front, and this is what people aren't understanding.
That's right. No, that's right.
Start
Oh.
questioning things.
I think we're in the wrong jobs. I think we should have been MPs.
Well, do you know, people are hard work.
They are.
They're
You know,
hard.
I genuinely didn't enjoy my time as a counsellor
Why?
because I don't. Well, I walk around my town and I think it's gone to the dogs, and I think, what am I? Why am I even doing this? What I don't know. I think with me the trouble was the idea was for a group of us to get in because 16 of us ran, but I was the only one that actually got in.
Oh,
Um, and because some of the group who was running with me had previously been a counsellor, they viewed how they basically didn't like me because of my association with other people. So from the moment I was there, they were like, "Oh, don't talk to him." And because obviously I had this channel where I reported on the 20-minute neighborhood thing that went, psh, they didn't like me. But I just found that I don't like shitting on my own doorstep. So I found that I was holding back on reporting on the council because I was a part of it. And then I just felt like a hypocrite because my channel is about exposing corruption whilst I'm actively being a part of it. So
yeah.
I just came out of it. There wasn't enough of us to make a difference. I was just a lone voice in a sea of pretty much Labour
And people
councillors.
want to jump on your energy, and then you're the one giving all the energy, and it's not transferred between the group. It needs you need a clan. The
Mm,
Scottish have it right. They have the clans, and they go and they stuck together, and those clans still, in some parts, stick together. We
absolutely.
don't have that so much in England. Ireland, completely again, different kettle of fish over there. There's just something in the English that we aren't as,
So
it's
even
not.
the Cornish have got their own
They're
government thing, haven't they?
strong. Yeah, they got things like Cabby.
Yeah.
They've got the good farmers groups. I mean, I'm part of a big thing down there with the farmers. Uh, they're amazing. They are
Mm,
amazing down
they are
there. But
very
the
good.
Irish are amazing, and the Scots. I think if you cross the Scots, they'll come for you. They will. The English just seem a little bit more. I don't know. There's some of us. Now I'm actually Scottish.
No,
I'm literally 78% Celtic. I've got a very small margin of English in me. And that's probably where I get this real air from.
it could be.
Yeah, when we did my family tree, I found out that my great grandfather actually survived the Battle of Waterloo.
Blimey.
So I wouldn't be here if he died.
No.
So I've got this real injustice. I cannot bear injustice, Chris. I cannot bear it. And that I don't. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It could be the farming, it could be the rape crisis, it could be the grooming, it could be water. I can't bear injustice. So if someone comes to me about anything, I'm like, right, let's go deal with it. And I want to pass on because I've got oodles and oodles of
Your
confidence.
warriorness.
Yeah, I'm like, just take a bit and go. Don't be afraid. Go on, run. I'm like that. And I think, like, I know that my colleagues are watching and I know that lots of them are really proud, but they can never be seen publicly to follow me or agree. And I bumped into a colleague recently. She gave me a massive hug and she's like, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, thanks. But I get it. It's a
Mm,
bit like being in the government and then you leave and no, like, look at Cummings, like they spat him out and nobody supported him, and now he's rising again.
Yeah, well, he's
So,
certainly coming out with a lot of truth bombs, isn't he? Or what I
mm,
would assume to be truth bombs. Who
oh
knows
yeah,
in this world?
yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you a question. I've completely forgot what it was going to be because that's how I do things here. Oh, what was that going to be about? No, that's gone. Typical. I'll tell you what I'd like to ask you. Where do you see yourself being in 5 years, both personally and within your campaign, fight campaign, whatever you want to call it, crusade?
I I feel very drawn to living a quiet life now. I'm I'm very drawn to the coast, the water,
Hmm.
the organic life, you would call it. There is a huge calling there, and it's becoming itchy. That makes sense. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting impatient with it. So I have to sit still and learn to sit in the surrender on that. So I'd like to think I'll be somewhere a little bit quieter. I don't have any money, I don't have anything like that. So I would live in a caravan. I'm at that point in my life. I don't care if someone said, "Where do you live?" I live in a caravan. I don't care. I'm there. So for me, it's that, but it's also I'm a healer, so I want to be able to bring women into a birth trauma tent, whatever they want to call it, and a space to start healing the trauma. They bring the babies, they bring the partner, they bring the grandparents, and we heal. And that's where I want to be. So that's very dear to me, and holding those spaces. And I'd like to be part of some sort of maternity structure to bring in. Now, this has come from a friend of mine, Tess, who's I'm not going to steal her work or her idea, but I'm going to talk about it because she plonked that into my brain about 4 years ago. Restorative healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it into practice, Chris. It's not in the NHS restorative healing. It's in the police force between victim and perpetrators, and it works really well. And it's coming into some schooling. Now, after I left the NHS on my last shift, I drove to work, and a lady was left labouring behind a curtain for 10 hours on her own. And all day I couldn't get this woman out of my head. Now I look back, she was sent. She was sent to me.
Choose your message.
She and that little girl were my message, and they always give me consent to talk about this, even though the hospital threatened to take legal action that I posted about it. But she wrote it on Facebook herself and named me. So her birth was really, really traumatic, and she was failed. And I've always categorically said this family were failed. They were told to come in when this happens, this happens, this happens. You must come into triage. So she did exactly what was told of her, and she was compliant through her pregnancy into the NHS compliance. When she came in, she has no idea what's going on in the culture and environmental because we're told not to tell them. And that's not duty of candor in my eyes. That's not honesty and integrity and all the elements of your code of practice. So my argument was if we had told her at the door that there was only two midwives in labour ward that day, and the midwife in triage, she was running a whole triage system on her own, and it was so busy with cesarean sections and inductions, we haven't got time to see you and you might labour alone for 10 hours. You've set an example that
Mm.
we're not going to be able to take care of her, which means she's got a choice. Well, okay, I'll stay and I might be able to manage my pain better because I don't have the support. Two, I could go for a walk, or three, I could go home, or four, go to another hospital. My argument is we robbed her and her partner of that choice because we hid under that guise of safety that will look after you. And we didn't, so we failed her. That in my eyes is clinical negligence
Mm-hmm.
because you haven't given someone the truth. So she laboured and her baby came out not very well and had neonatal resuscitation. And the baby went to NICU, and I was devastated because listening to the words she said after was, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Default into trauma, her, blame, blame, blame. And women will always blame themselves. And I stood there and I thought, I am never, ever going to let you take that blame. I'm not doing that. And I won't do that. So her husband went upstairs to see the little one. When I left, I day text, which is our internal reporting system. I day text that there was no staffing. She was left behind the curtain. She had no support. She'd had a terrible birth and she was failed. And I put it as a serious, so you can put them into three brackets: serious, moderate, or mild. If it's serious, it gets investigated properly. by a team, and it gets talked about on a table, like a round table event. If it's moderate, the same thing can happen, but not as severe. And then if it's mild, it's literally closed at the desktop level and put in a drawer. They downgraded it to mild, right? I didn't know that because I don't know what then happens to the outcome of the day texts. Now, I left that shift that day, went home and knew I was never, ever going to go back. So the next morning I went to healing, broke down in my healing group, bawled my eyes out and said, I'm done. And they helped me press send on that email. They held that space for me, and that's women. They would be better midwives because of that. And then the next day I went back to work, but I only went back to really get the name and number of the family and let them know that whatever I was going to do next was for them, really. So I went.
Sorry, I was going to say, how did you find out then that they downgraded it to mild?
That came later from the mother.
Right, okay.
So the mother was waiting for her report in the post, never arrived. So I gave her the email address of the head of midwifery, and she emailed her, and she said, can I call you? And she said, oh, we downgraded it to a mild because you were in the safest place. Like, what the hell? So then gaslit the mother even more. And what I wanted to touch on, Chris, is the restorative healing. Is what happened was Rebecca and I spoke, and then when I saw her husband in Tesco a few days later, he said, you know, they think the baby's gonna be fine. And I was so relieved because it traumatized me. Afterwards, about 6 weeks later, I went to see them when they'd settled in, you know, the sleep's not so bad. And we talked about everything for weeks. I told them everything about midwifery that day, the staffing. She no longer blamed herself. That's restorative healing. That's truth. So I've healed a little bit in her. She's got her own work to do, but I healed a part of her that she doesn't have to carry, that will forever stay with her. And that, if you think now we've got 600,000 births a year, we've got 1 in 3 birth trauma being carried around in the street in everyday life. And that's only one of those women that's had that opportunity to hear from her midwife that she was failed. And she's in a totally different place to probably what any other woman would be in, because we get hidden behind the veil of the corporation. So that's my mission, is to bring that through some way in maternity. But guess what? They won't speak to me. The BBC, ITV, GB News, the midwives that investigate now, they won't even come to me. And their names get tagged in all my posts. And I will never follow these people because it shows their integrity through and through. They are not wanting to hear the truth. They want to hear the bits that they can hide the rest behind.
Absolutely. So even GB News,
never picked it up. No.
So they're opposition anyway, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, not sure about
them. I think there's good people within it, like most things. But I think if they're governed by Ofcom, then they're just part of the same shit, aren't they? Basically.
That's why I just think be my own. You know, people might say I'm a little bit of a journalist. I'm not. I'm learning that route, but I just post out whatever I feel. It's my opinion. It's my anecdotal data that I've watched through COVID, the change in baby deaths, the change in women being sicker and sicker, and cardiac arrests. You might not have that in the statistics because they've hidden it, but you've seen it, you've walked it. That stands for something.
Well, I was going to say, actually, I think that was what I was going to touch on. No, it isn't. But with regards to, like that you just said, child deaths, have you noticed a big decline in child deaths?
Not a decline, an increase in baby deaths.
Yeah, sorry. God, I worded that wrong. Yeah. I mean, have you seen a decline in births?
So, well, no, because in COVID, birth rate pretty much stayed the same. Then it dropped after the vaccines to 1.44 per woman. So the birth rate dropped to the lowest it had ever been since the 1970s, and death overtook birth for the first time ever. So if you think we need 2.1 to repopulate the generation of civilization, we're at 1.44 in England, and in Canada they're at 1.2. So they've lost civilizations already in the next 50 to 100 years, which is why anyone that can get pregnant that's healthy and well needs to have a baby. there's always going to be baby deaths in pregnancy and mother deaths in pregnancy and birth. You'll never get rid of that. That's like life. But what we've lost is, Chris, is the women that would naturally be the statistic. We can't see them anymore.
No.
So all these women are now in groups and Facebook groups hating on midwives because their baby should have lived. But some of those would have statistically have been the number that would have died naturally. And we can't see them anymore
No.
because it's such a mess.
It's horrendous. Especially when you paint it out like that. It's horrendous. I mean, I don't understand or not so much understand, but my biggest fear is now that since 2020, I've just got no trust in the health service. So if I've got a pain, because I had testicular cancer when I was 27, 28.
Gosh, so young.
Yeah, so they whipped that bugger out. I went on to have 2 kids, so one of each as well, so all good.
Well done.
But now if I get a pain or something, your first thought is the worst, but then the second thought is, but I don't think I would even bother going to see NHS because
that's where people are.
And that's a huge concern,
Mm.
really.
Mm. Like how do we know how to fix ourselves anymore? We don't. So we wouldn't even know how to put a finger, if you've broken your finger, how to put it together, or you've got a cut, you wouldn't even know how to septically clean it. I would, but lots of people wouldn't. And in September, so I left in the February, in the April, obviously I'd had all of the you'll go missing, and then I got called a baby killer online, so that was pretty horrific. So by the September, I was in a bit of not a bad way. By then I was coming out of the darkness, but I was still very tearful and I was feeling really
deflated.
bruised. Yeah, and my appendix was rupturing, and I got up in the night and it hit me like that really quickly. Now appendicitis normally it's not a sudden onset like that. You've normally had some pain before. Never had any stomach pain. Never. I don't even have constipation or diarrhea or anything. I'm very quite normal in that way. So I was like, I knew as soon as I woke up, I was like, this is appendicitis. How do I go to my hospital that's told me I'll go missing and be put to sleep? Oh, Chris, I was in a right state. So I was like, right, it's trap wind, channeling the trap wind theory in my head, doing a bit of yoga, and it was getting worse, and I was looking more pale, and I was feeling really sick, and I was thinking, if I'm going to vomit, then I'm not very well. I started to vomit. So my husband drove me in, and I remember being in the back of the car, and I thought, I might not come out of this, because 50% of people that have appendicitis, 50% will die from sepsis if it's ruptured.
Really?
I was thinking, or up to 50%, it's quite high figures. I was thinking, oh my goodness. But I was like, at the same time, a part of me didn't want to go in there. And I thought, well, I'll take my fate. That's how, like, not giving a toss I became. I thought, well, if that's my fate, that's my fate. I've made peace with it. But then I was thinking, I've got children, I've got a 4-year-old, like I need to not do this. I need to go. So I put that behind me and I went into A&E. It was empty. Not a single person in there. They dumped me in a chair and I was screaming at this point. No pain relief. They stepped over my feet to go in a handover room because I was lying across the chairs. And then I went, this is barbaric. We wouldn't even do this to pregnant women. Well, we did, but So they put me straight up to surgery and then they whisked me down the next morning. And as I was going to sleep, I can remember seeing the anaesthetist and he was beside me and he had a little, his name was a nickname. I won't call him it, but it wasn't his name. It was his nickname. And it made me laugh. And I went, I'll remember you. I was like, if you kill me, don't take my leg. I was going, it's my appendix. And don't give me a COVID jab. I was like that. And he said, oh, are you feeling all right? Because I was very slight. I'd lost a lot of my weight from all the stress through working. And then one of my colleagues was there for maternity. And I was like, oh, it's so good to see you. Don't let them kill me. Who says that?
I know.
Like, this is how can I go from being so proud to walk and getting a midwifery degree at uni and my dad's crying in the crowd and I'm so bloody proud of myself to getting to that point. Like, but what I've learned is the system will spit you out if you do not align. So being spat out isn't a negative. It's an absolute,
it's a confirmation that you're doing right.
Absolutely. So that's where I'm at with it.
No,
And
absolutely, that's cool. And I would just like to thank you from me and everybody else watching this for having the balls the size of Iron Man to do what you've been doing. And I wish you all the very best moving forward with the best possible outcome that could possibly come your way. I would love to have you back on again in the future, probably with some better questions. And yeah, I'd love to just catch up and see how things are.
absolutely, Chris, I'd love to. We could easily sit and talk for an hour once a month, couldn't we?
Quite easily putting the world to right. Well, I could quite easily listen, but no, brilliant.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
No, my pleasure. It really has been an honor. And I hope everyone watching this has enjoyed it. Until next time, look after yourselves. Take care. Bye for now.